Are you excited to give your first speech? I'm excited to tell you about it. Your first speech for Comp 231 Public Speaking at Durham Tech is the self-introduction speech. It's a speech assignment that's an informative speech designed to ease yourself into the speech-making process by introducing yourself to your classmates. Specifically, it's a 3 to 5 minute speech, so it's not particularly long. There's no visual aid required, and there's no sources required. Complete details are always in the speech packet, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If you click here on the self-introduction speech assignment, you'll see this information repeated, as well as some other information that you want to make sure that you pay attention to. First, to complete the assignment, you need to upload the speech to YouTube. You can either upload the video as unlisted or as public. What you can't do is make the speech private. If you make the video private, that means it's private and only you can view it. Therefore, I can't grade it. So you'll have to either make it unlisted or public. You also need to upload a document or a PDF of your written outline. This is your speech preparation outline. Do not submit a Pages document, a text document, or any other kind of document I don't even know about, because I won't be able to open it. Documents from Microsoft or PDFs, please. You want to make sure, this is very important, that you include a link to the speech in your outline. This is how I grade your speech, again, with the link. So you want to make sure that you provide the link. You don't want to go to all the trouble of recording yourself, uploading it to YouTube, and then not sharing the link. So here are the additional resources for the assignment. This is what's called the speech packet. It's available as both a PDF and a Microsoft Word document. They're both the exact same, so either one is fine to open. We'll open the PDF version. Here is the information, again, pointed out to you. The general purpose is to inform. Specifically, you're introducing yourself to your classmates by sharing some personal information about your life. 3 to 5 minutes, no sources, and no visual aids. It's worth 100 points. As the semester progresses, the speeches are going to be worth more and more points, but we start out pretty low with just 100. For your first formal speech, you're delivering a speech of introduction. Use the speech to give the audience a sense of who you are as a person. Why might we like to get to know you? Speech professors and textbook authors Osborne and Osborne have some suggestions on how you might want to structure your self-introduction speech, asking you some questions to help get you thinking about how you might want to organize them. Maybe you were affected by your environment. Did you have a special person who had a major impact on your life, like a mother or a grandfather or a sibling or a teacher? Were you shaped by some unusual experience? Maybe you lived abroad for the first 10 years of your life, and when you finally came to America, it was such a new experience, and you want to share that with your classmates. Does the work that you do, is that reflective of who you are? What career will your major lead to, and why do you want that career? These are just some example questions that you can ask yourself to help get you thinking about how you want to address your classmates. Now, what you don't want to do, and I thought this was obvious, but it's not, is to get up and start answering these questions one by one. I've seen a student do that. Clearly, he misunderstood the assignment. That's not what I'm asking you to do. These questions are just some example questions to help get you thinking about what it is you want to talk to your audience about. Everyone is assigned a speaking day. If we're in person, you will have either 1 or 2 days, possibly 3, to give your speech. If you're online, everyone delivers their speech on the same day. If you're unable to deliver your speech on that day, there is a 10% late deduction. But it's only 10%, so it's not that bad. So as long as you deliver it by the next class period or within the 1-week time limit for online, it's fine. And you'll miss 1 letter grade, but a 90 is a lot better than a 0. One thing that each of your speeches needs is a speech preparation outline. This is a full sentence typed outline that's turned in for grading. You want to make sure that you label each of the 3-part framework. That's the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Make sure it's typed and proofread for grammar, spelling, and sentence format. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want to have so many grammatical errors that it makes it difficult for myself or you to read it. You want to start with the speech preface information, the specific purpose, and the central idea and thesis statement. You also want to make sure you use standard outline labels, Roman numerals, indentations, and the like. No paragraphs disguised as an outline. And that each point, including main points and subpoints, should be written as only one sentence. This here is exactly what I use to evaluate you. This is the rubric. It's from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being inadequate and 5 being excellent. So this speech is worth 100 points. So it's broken down as such. The first 30 points is for your preparation outline. First, did you state the specific purpose and central idea outside the outline, like I asked you to right up here? If you did, cool. 5. Did you label your introduction, body, and conclusion? Maybe not your conclusion. Maybe that's a 4. Did you use a consistent pattern of symbolization and indentation? Maybe not so much. Maybe a 3. Did you state your main points and subpoints in full sentences? Oh yeah, you did. 5. And did you label your transitions, internal summaries, and internal previews? You did? Great. So based on that, I'd probably give you a 28 or a 29. Moving on, you want to start with the beginning, your introduction. Did you gain attention? Did you start your speech by, "Hi, I'm Ms. Gilbert, and today we're going to talk about your speech"? Oh, wow, that's pretty boring. Or did you give an attention getter? Tell a story, ask a question, give a quote, give a startling statistic, something to get your audience interested in listening to the rest of your speech. Did you establish your topic and purpose? Do we know what it is you're actually going to be talking about today? And did you establish the relevance to the listeners? Hi, I'm your classmate, and I'm going to tell you about myself because we're going to be spending the next 8 to 16 weeks together. So let's be friends. And then did you preview your main points? What are you going to talk about in your speech? The introduction is worth 20 points. Next is structure, organization, and support, also worth 20 points. Did you effectively use personal and verbal support? Did you make claims and then back them up? Did you use appropriate and clear language with transitions, words, and phrases? And are your main points clearly and directly stated to help develop the central idea and specific purpose? Perfect? 20 points. Awesome. Now next is what everyone is always freaked out about when they start: delivery. Most people can write an outline pretty well, but it's the delivery part that freaks them out, and that's okay. By the end of the class, you'll be a little bit less freaked out. I guarantee it. Now, delivery, you'll notice, is worth 10 out of that 100 points. Now, what that means is if you 100% absolutely bomb your delivery, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, as long as everything else is great, you can still get a 90 on your speech. Doesn't sound so bad, right? Right. Now, obviously, as the semester progresses, delivery is going to be worth more, outlines are going to be worth less, etc. But we're easing into the speech-making process here. So your delivery is only worth 10 points. Next is your online presentation. Did your video have effective framing and decent audio quality? Are you like this into the camera so that all we can see is maybe your chin? That's terrible. Are you so far away and so quiet that we can't hear you? What you want to make sure is that you have a good background where there's not a lot of distractions. Now, I understand that everyone has a different environment in which they reside and work and live in, and not everyone has a great space in order to record speeches. I personally don't. I have a lot of clutter in my house, but I have pretty much 1 or 2 spots that look pretty good as I sit in between my 2 closets in my bedroom. So it's not particularly distracting, and I can sit a good distance away. You'll also want to make sure that your camera is far enough away so that you can see your gestures. If you're too close, then all we can see is you doing this, and so you can gesture as much as you want, but no one can see it. So you want to make sure that when you gesture, you're able to see it. not necessarily the bottom of your elbows, but mostly. And is the speech delivered in one take and unedited? This is meant to mimic an in-person speech class, or it might actually be an in-person speech class. But what you want to do is deliver it one take unedited. This is not a video production class, so you're not going to be judged on your video production skills. We want to mimic the speech environment as much as possible. So present online, more or less in one take. Finally, the conclusion. Did you summarize the main point, and did you refer back to the attention-getting device from the introduction? There is a time limit for each speech. And the reason for this is, have you ever gone to any event whatsoever where someone gave a speech and, oh my goodness, the speech was so long you couldn't handle it? You almost got up and left. It was so boring you fell asleep. Sometimes people talk for longer than they are supposed to. I'm going to teach you not to be one of them. If you're going to speak for 3 to 5 minutes, you're going to speak for 3 to 5 minutes. I did competitive speech for 8 years in both high school and college. And in my college, we had a sign up in our speech room that said, if you're not timing it, you're not practicing it. 3 to 5 minutes gives you a lot of wiggle room. If you deliver a speech that's 2 minutes, you probably don't have enough material in there, that right up here, the structure, organization, and support, in order to justify a good grade for that. And if you give me a 10-minute speech, I gotta sit through a 10-minute speech, and I'm sure you're super awesome, and I look forward to getting to know you during the semester, but I asked for 3 to 5, so let's go with 3 to 5. There's also the late penalty, 10% deduction. And then finally, you end up with your speech grade out of 100. So let's talk about that preparation outline, your roadmap to how to give your speech. Now, this handout is modified from the University of Hawaii at Maui's Community College Speech Department, because you don't want to plagiarize. You always want to cite your sources. You want to start with your main points. Look at the information you've gathered and try to determine how it should be patterned. Is it a chronological, spatial, topical, problem cause? You'll understand more what this means as we progress throughout the semester. Most speeches have 2 and generally not more than 3 main points, especially for a short introduction speech. Generally speaking, people can only remember, I think, about 5 main points. So you don't want to have a speech with 7 main points, especially if it's a 5-minute speech. And you want to state your main points in full sentences, not in fragments. And make sure that you devote an appropriate amount of time to each one. Next, you want to make your components of the main points with subpoints. Think about how each thing supports what's ahead of it. And then support those subpoints and sub-subpoints. Those are your facts and examples. You don't necessarily need sub-subpoints for your short introduction speech. However, most of you will have some in your speech because these are the facts and information that support what you're saying. You want to also make sure that you use connectives during the speech. Know what your transitions and signposts are and when to use them. And also make sure you label and include all the connectives as part of your preparation outline. So here is a sample self-introduction speech preparation outline that just kind of gives you a breakdown. As we talked about, you start with a specific purpose. You want to describe your purpose in 1 sentence. To inform my audience or to persuade my audience. Now notice that my audience is underlined. This is because this is public speaking. And the reason that you're speaking in public is to communicate with your audience. You're not shouting down a well with no one listening. Everything you do is meant to connect with your audience. Therefore, it's important to put my audience in the specific purpose statement to remind yourself of what you're doing and why. You're informing or persuading your audience. And then is your thesis statement. This is your 1-sentence summary of the speech. What it is that you're actually going to be telling us about. Next, you want to start by labeling your introduction. There's 4 components to the self-introduction speech introduction. The first is the attention getter, material that grabs the listener's attention. A question, a joke, a demonstration, a short story, something other than, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm going to tell you about myself. Next is your thesis statement, where you introduce the 1-sentence summary. Then you want to tell people how you know anything about what it is you're going to be talking about. Now, it's a speech on you, so clearly you know yourself pretty well. But this comes in handy, especially in the persuasive speeches, where you want to demonstrate that you have authority to speak on your topic. Next, you want to preview your main points. Alert listeners to the main points of the speech. Finally, you want to transition, using words like finally, next, now that we've learned, etc. Transition statements let your audience know that you're moving from the introduction into the body. The next part is the body itself. You want to label the body. The first main point, the single complex sentence expressed as the first main idea in the speech. Then you'll want a subpoint, supporting material and evidence, maybe specific research findings, expert testimony, survey, interview, anecdote, something to support what your main point is. Then you'll transition into your second main point, the second main or important idea that you'll address in the speech. You might have sub-subpoints to support your subpoints. Now, sub-subpoints do not need to be written as full sentences, but main points and subpoints will. Now, one thing I want to draw your attention to is subpoints, especially sub-subpoints, they get lonely. And what you never want to do is just have one by itself. So if you have an A, you need a B. If you have a 1, you need a 2. Now you might see this written as no orphan subpoints, but maybe I'll change it to saying lonely subpoints, because you want them to be in pairs or groups of 3 or 4. Because if it's just a sub-subpoint, it's probably actually part of your subpoint. So every time you have an A, you need a B. And every time you have a 1, you need a 2. Don't make them lonely little orphans. Bring a friend. So this is a short speech. It just has 2 main points. And then you will transition into your conclusion. You might just say in conclusion. That's fine. Gets the job done, right? In the conclusion, you start by restating your thesis and then summarizing your main points. Now, summarize your main points. You don't have to rehash everything that you've said in the entire speech, because I've seen that happen as well. Just tell us, today we talked about this and this. And then your clincher. This is your final statement that reinforces your main ideas, provides closure, and ties back to the introduction. So you want to refer back to that attention-getting device. Okay, so what does all this look like? What is this actually going to look like? Well, it might look like this. This is a sample self-introduction speech manuscript. Now, this is a manuscript. I want to make very clear that this is a manuscript. It is not an outline. It's included as an example only. Everyone learns differently and everyone's speech makes differently. I'm the kind of person that probably wants to write everything out before they say it. And so my initial preparation for the speech is probably going to look a lot like this, just giant paragraphs. And that's fine to start. It's fine to start by writing everything out. But then you're going to want to turn it into a preparation outline. So I want to show you an example of how something looks as a manuscript for this speech. Starts with a K and ends with an Anna. And then show you how to take what you've done, if you decide to start with a manuscript, and move it to an actual preparation outline. Now, the reason that you want to not read from a manuscript is because you're going to read from a manuscript. Believe it or not, the more words that are in front of you, the more likely you are to read them word for word. And when that happens, you're not making eye contact with your audience. You're doing this. Hello all, my name is Kiawana, which has inspired me to title my speech starts with a K and ends with an Anna. I have reached, I will say, my late 20s. Oh, I forgot about eye contact. Hi, eye contact. And now I don't know where I am in my speech. I have spent these years learning to understand myself, me. I will describe to you today a few aspects that have shaped who I am and helped me to decide what my goals are. And okay, so now I've looked up again, and now I don't know where I am. Okay, see how that wasn't super awesome? Trust me, Kia wanted a much better job delivering her speech because she didn't use a manuscript. She started with a manuscript and then moved down to this preparation outline. She starts with her specific purpose to inform my audience about a few important aspects and ideals that make up who she is. She talks about her central idea. She's going to talk about her school and her education, the jobs that she's held in her career goals, and then the influence of her family and loved ones. And then, if it's an online class, you want to make sure that you have the YouTube link inserted there so that I can grade it. Now, you notice that earlier I had things labeled like attention getter, credibility statement, etc. You are more than welcome, nay, encouraged to actually label it in what you submit to me. And the reason for that is so you know that it's there. Oh crap, did I forget my credibility statement? No, I have not. It is right here. Ha 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 ha. That's one way to make sure that you have all the components in the introduction. So when I'm grading and I say, oh, credibility statement, check. And you don't accidentally forget it. So feel free to use the Microsoft Word copy and then just delete everything in front and just keep using this as your template. That is perfectly fine. The transition statement, which is inside this, but that's totally fine, says, now I'll take you back to my younger years when I graduated high school. Kiwana's first main point talks about getting out of high school and deciding that maybe she wanted to go to college, maybe she didn't want to go to college. That's her first main point. Transitioning, speaking of finance, that brings me to my next aspect, my job and my career goals. The subpoints support the main point, and then the sub-subpoints support the subpoint. Notice they're not lonely, they have each other. Transitioning into the third main point, Kiwana talking about her children, her husband, the importance of family in her life. Transition statement, in conclusion, it ain't fancy, but it gets the job done. Then the conclusion, restating the thesis, main points, and the clincher. So this is just one example of how you might start with a manuscript and then turn it into a preparation outline. Now, if you're looking, this here is a lot easier to read from here. So that if you are looking at your outline, because of course you're going to look at your outline, you haven't spent 10 years memorizing this. You only have 2 or 3 weeks. It's much easier to read because it's indented and it's in main points, etc. So again, the preparation outline is much easier to read. Now here is another example. Now depending on when you have this class, you might have different examples, but again, another example, the many faces of me, informing my audience about who Marquita is as a person, different names that she's used, how her faith has shaped her life, how different members of her family have shaped her life. Transition, there you have it. Conclusion, restating the thesis, the main point summary, and the clincher. Whether she's called Lady, Sis, Kita, or Ma, that's who makes up Marquita. So this is your speech packet. So it gives you a good information about what you want from your speech. Now also, you might want to preview the rubric. And I'm going to do this and it's not going to work and I don't know why. But I'll show you what the rubric is later. So we're going to exit out and we're just going to go click here to assignments. And you'll see the rubric here. So you can preview the rubric. Again, exactly what it is I promised you before. The preparation outline for online speeches were 30 points, introduction 20, structure 20, etc., etc. So exactly what is presented in your speech packet, just in this way. So now we're going to go back to the lessons page. And I'm going to show you the second thing that you need to do. Now there's also a forum assignment. Because it's a public speaking class for online classes, you want to make sure that you keep the public in public speaking. So all students are going to create a discussion forum thread for their speeches. After you post the YouTube link, so you'll click here, you want to view the full description. So you'll do start new conversation. My speech, cats, and radio. Those are two things that are important to me. Here is my YouTube link. And then I'm going to post. Awesome. Now, other people are going to read it, they're going to watch it, and they're going to tell me what they think about it. Now, we're going to have a positive aspect as well as a needs work aspect. So, if my attention getter was terrible, if I just said, hi, I'm Ms. Gilbert, and I'm going to talk to you about radio and cats, that's boring. So, when you respond, you might want to say, I think your attention getter might need a little work. What if you talked about the first cat that you have and how you fell in love with her? Cool. That's a good needs improvement comment. If my conclusion was the greatest conclusion you've ever seen in your life, tell me that. So you want to give your peers feedback that is both helpful so they can incorporate it into future speeches, as well as positive to let them know that they're not alone. You'll also want to see, before you start, if you go here, it'll tell you some ground rules for course discussions. Just a little bit about how to participate. If there's a glitch in any kind, let me know. Be patient, be brief, cite your sources. Don't do see you late. That's weird. You want to respect diversity. You want to not yell. You want to not flame. And remember that once you say something, it's said. Don't ring a bell that you can't unring. So here are some, again, general discussion forums, just when you consider writing it. So we're going to go back here to the lesson. There we go. So you'll notice that there's two parts to every speech. First is the actual self-introduction speech, where you will upload the PDF or Word document, including a link to your speech in the assignment. Then the second part is to go to the forum assignment and post it there, as well as give feedback to 2 other speeches. It doesn't really matter which speeches you do, but for practical sake, you can just do the 2 in front of you or the 2 behind you, or really any 2 at all. So again, there's 2 parts to each speech assignment, and you want to make sure that you get both parts in. The Sakai will send you an email letting you know when the assignment is due 24 hours in advance, but that feature is not available for forum posts, so you'll just have to remember. You can also go up here to next, and you'll see that in the weekly checklist, it says upload the outline and YouTube link to the assignment, as well as share the speech assignment and comment on other 2 speeches. Cool. You done? No, we're not done. How do you know what a speech actually looks like? I'll show you that too. On the week the speech is due, if you scroll down, you'll see some example speeches for each speech. Now we're in the self-introduction speech, so we'll take a look at that. Now, generally speaking, most of them are pretty average examples, unless I specifically note that they're not. So, for example, this one here by Michael Taylor is an excellent speech. Please watch it first. You'll notice that it's really well delivered. It's really entertaining. It's upbeat. You're going to know exactly who Michael Taylor is as a result of it. Next, I want you to watch this one by Janelle. It's not as good. It needs some work. After you watch Michael's speech and then you watch Janelle's speech, you'll notice some pretty stark contrasts. Michael clearly worked on the speech. It has a fantastic outline. It flows really well. Janelle got up and started talking and then kind of stopped when she was done. Not the greatest speech, but a good example to contrast with Michael's speech. The rest, this one also wasn't super great, but the rest are pretty average. So watch them. Think about what you can incorporate into your speech, things that they did really well, and maybe things that they didn't do super well that you could avoid in your speech. You don't have to watch any of the example speeches, but I very much encourage you to watch at least a couple just to give you an example of what a speech is actually going to look like. So that is your tutorial on the self-introduction speech for COM 231. Good luck.